I'm Mayor Figueroa, and I'm calling the regular meeting of the University Place City Council for Monday, April the 1st, 2024 to order. And would the city clerk do the roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor. Thank you. Councilmember Boykin.
Here.
Councilmember Worthington.
Here.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Here.
Councilmember Grassi.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
Present.
Mayor Figueroa.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And will Councilmember Grassi lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, Mayor. Please join us in the pledge to our nation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Grassi. And for item number 4, approval of agenda, may I have a motion?
Move approval of the, excuse me.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. So we're on item number 5 and presentations, and today this month of April is a Fair Housing Month that's being proclaimed in many different levels of government, and we certainly want to be one of those that understand and appreciates fair housing. And we have several people here present, and before I come down to do the proclamations, I'd like to have Sandy McKenzie, Brian Pullen, and actually both of those individuals are in our Planning Commission, along with Maya Rice and Narva Walton. Will you come right here in the front, please? Thank you. Okay, who's all here?
We're missing Sandy tonight.
Oh, Sandy, and anybody else that I called their name? Okay. Welcome. Okay. The City of University Place Proclamation, whereas this year we commemorate the 56th anniversary of the passage of the Fair Housing Act, the landmark civil rights law signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson on April 11, 1968, that made discrimination in housing transactions unlawful. And whereas the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in housing because of race, color, national origin, religion, and sex, including gender identity and sexual orientation, disability, and familiar status, family status. Whereas this year's Fair Housing Month theme is Fair Housing, the Act in Action, and whereas citizens in our community should work together to uphold the fair housing laws and the principle of equal opportunity on which it is based. And whereas barriers which diminish the rights and limit the options of any citizen will ultimately diminish the rights and limit the options for all. Whereas, now, therefore, the City Council of the City of University Place recognizes the 56th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act and encourage all housing providers to support and affirm their commitment to the principles of fair housing opportunities for all. Proclaimed by the City Council of the City of University Place, Washington on April 1st, 2024, and attested by Mayor Figueroa. So with that, I'm going to give this copy to one of our commissioners, Brian, and for your copy with the commission, and we're going to put out the official one on file with the city. Okay, thank you so much for coming here on such an important proclamation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We have another presentation, and this is an introduction by the chief. Chief, we come up here, and we have a special new person in our city, and I'll let the chief do all the honors.
All right, thank you. Corey, come on up. It's my privilege tonight to introduce our new community outreach officer. This is Corey Shears. Corey worked 29 years with the Sheriff's Department and also 9 years here in University Place. He retired last year and now is back with us as our COO. And while Corey has a very impressive resume, I could talk at length about his knowledge, experience, skills. The one thing I want to share tonight and leave you with, and what stands out to me, is that Corey is passionate about UP. It's like home to him. I've heard him say that a few times. He cares deeply about our community and our citizens, and we are truly lucky to have him because of the person that he is, but also because of what UP means to him. So welcome back, Corey.
Awesome.
Thank you both. Thank you, Chief. And one of the things I just want to mention with this is that, as most of us know, a levy was passed by the citizens of University Place for public safety to include public liaison officers as well as other detective and other police officers. And so this is the beginning. It's not the end. We still have a lot to do to bring on additional staff, but certainly this is very exciting and promising to our citizens and towards public safety. With that, before I go to public comment, I do want to recognize she's a very special lady in our district, and Mari Levitt, would you stand, please? And this is our representative from our district, which includes University Place, and just comment, and that is that a lot of our improvements in our city that you see that has been really enhanced, whether it be sidewalks or parking or who knows what, it's a long list. And it's because of this, our Representative Mari Levitt that has really pushed hard and really worked hard for our citizens, our city, and we just really appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. With that, I'd like to go move on to public comment, and on the screen you will see directions and how to do it if you're online. Otherwise, I do have an attendance roster here, and I'll start with Holly Galbraith. And hopefully I pronounced that.
Can Representative Levitt go first?
Is she on here? She's not on here, so she can't speak. No, just kidding. No, just kidding. She's more than welcome. If everybody on this list looks like you're all together, you're welcome to Representative Levitt. No? Okay. 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 So we'll continue with Holly Galbraith. Yes, ma'am. Just have that and your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I am Dr. Holly Galbraith. I reside at 6813 Yazell Road in Long Branch, Washington. I'm going to read from my notes because this is a topic I'm very passionate about, and I know that I have limited time, so excuse me for my formality. But I am a child psychologist and a retired University Place School District special ed administrator. And I have over 40 years of experience working with children with disabilities, and I've made my life's work to advocate on their behalf. And that's why I jumped at the chance to be part of the University Place Recreation Foundation Board, whose mission has been to establish an inclusive playground. For those of you who are not familiar with this project, an inclusive playground is essentially a play space designed for everyone, typically developing youth and families as well as individuals with physical and sensory and/or other challenges. We are so excited to announce that after approximately 2 years of planning and fundraising, we are going to have a groundbreaking and for the first phase of the project, and it will be Friday, April 12th at 11 a.m. at Cirque Park, and everyone is invited to come and celebrate with us. We've heard from many family members that one of the features that will make this space even more accessible for individuals with disabilities will be to have a family accessible restroom. So that's phase 2 of our project, and we're continuing to actively solicit funds for that. This playground will be an invaluable investment for our community, especially for the children and families who now have the opportunity to enjoy and play in a safe and beautiful public setting. It will also send a message that UP is a place where everyone belongs. I want to thank all of you for being part of this project and for supporting our efforts. And I want to make sure you all join our groundbreaking celebration on Friday, the 12th at 11 a.m. at Cirque Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. And the next person on the list is Claudia Ellsworth. Please provide your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Claudia Ellsworth. My address is P.O. Box 64948, University Place 98464. I am a past president of what used to be the Tacoma Narrows Rotary and is now the Rotary Club of University Place and Furcrest. And for several years, maybe a decade, my club has been interested in pursuing a project of this type, seeing a playground of this type in University Place, but we are too small to pull off something like this on our own. I was thinking about how to describe this particular event, and the other day it came to me that it was a convergence. It was a convergence of the will of our club, the availability of major sponsors and major donors, the presence of the UPPRF, the willingness of the city to provide ground, and all of these things have come together in a very short period of time in governmental terms, less than 2 years. So the remarkable thing is that thanks to the opportunity and all of the partnerships, we've got a groundbreaking on April 12th at 11 a.m. Many thanks to our donors, our major donors, the NAMES Foundation, the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation, the Cheney Foundation, Sutherland Foundation, the State of Washington, Pierce County, Rotary, and many other small donors. So I will see you on the 12th at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next in line to speak is Caroline Bellisi.
Good evening, Council. My name is Caroline Bellisi. I reside at 3633 Marketplace West. I am here as a member of the board of the University Place Parks and Recreation Foundation. As you have heard, the Inclusive Playground has a long history, and it's a grassroots history. It came from individuals at Rotary that saw a need in our community. They worked tirelessly for a few years to get the program up and running. And at the same time, University Place Community Coalition also saw a need for an inclusive playground. The two got together and formed, now we have the foundation that is getting this project underway. So there have been lots of grassroots efforts, lots of difficult times working to get the funding for this $1,100,000 project off the ground. We are now at a point where we have ordered the equipment. We are breaking ground, as you have heard repeatedly, on April 12th at 11 o'clock at Cirque Park. However, there is still a need to finish the gap so that we can get phase 1 and phase 2 going and get them both completed in time for the grand opening so that we have an inclusive, family-friendly restroom. So I am here tonight to ask and actually put out a challenge that our council members step forward and make donations for this valuable community asset. Not only will it serve community members, but it will serve Pierce County. It will be one of the few inclusive playgrounds, or the only inclusive playground in Pierce County. So it becomes a draw for our community, along with Chambers Bay and our Whole Foods, et cetera, and brings people into our community and shows University Place to be the inclusive community that we have come to love and take pride in being in. And being that this is a grassroots effort, I think we need to thank our foundations that have contributed through their donations by matching and supporting it from a personal, individual citizen standpoint. So again, April 12th at 11 o'clock at Cirque Park will be the groundbreaking. And then there will be the big event when the playground is fully operational, and it'll be a nice community party. But in the meantime, let's make sure that we get the last leg of our donations going so that we can ensure this project be done, and that our community members step up individually and begin to provide the donations for the last balance of our fundraising. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next person on the list is Chris Saunders.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Saunders, and I live at 40th Street West in University Place here, and I'm the president of University Place Parks and Recreation Foundation. And I first want to just acknowledge and thank Representative Mari Levitz. She is the one who ushered through the state grant that we just got notified on Friday that it is signed and coming. So we are fully funded for the playground, and the restrooms still have about $50,000 to raise. I do want to acknowledge that Cal Ripken Senior Foundation has been instrumental in our process. They helped us all the way through from before design all the way through to now. And they will pick up the project, work directly with the employees here in the city, Jack Eklund, Tony West, and Matt Kaiser, to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, as well as, of course, Steve Suggs and his group, and get the playground built. We just want to thank them so much for the whole work that they have done. I do want to say, people have been asking, didn't really Cal Ripken bring like all the money? 90% of the money was local. So very little came from outside the state. Another thing, we've heard about the first and second phase, and the only last piece is we hope you all come on Friday, April 12th at 11 o'clock, and come celebrate with us this major milestone. So it's been a big project, and it's been a long journey, and you'll hear very little from us any longer, just because Cal Ripken and the city will be do the actual build themselves. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
The next one on the list is Brian Pullen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Byron Pullen, Locust Avenue West here in UP. So again, good evening, Mayor and Council. Byron Pullen. I'm a representative tonight of the Tacoma-Pierce County Association of Realtors, as well as a citizen here of University Place. We'd like to thank the Mayor and the Council for their willingness to be a partner with the real estate industry as we continue to pursue equality and opportunity and outcomes for people of all communities. Every year, the Realtors commemorate the passage of the Fair Housing Act of 1968 with events and education that shine a light on housing discrimination and segregation. Fair Housing Month signifies a recommitment to expanding equal access to housing for all. Tacoma Pierce County Association of Realtors, we are proud to work in partnership with government, private housing providers, and as well as our membership to promote best practices and education aimed at preventing discrimination and fostering diverse and inclusive communities. This includes our industry enacting new fair housing training requirements for all licensed real estate agents in the state, as well as our industry's advocacy work in the state legislature to create more housing accessibility for all. However, the importance of fair housing goes beyond just a list of do's and don'ts. Habitat for Humanity cites that 74% of Habitat homeowners said their family's overall health improved after moving into their home. And there are several studies, both in the Journal of Urban Economics as well as Housing Studies, that shows home ownership is shown to lead to increases in graduation rates, as well as net family generational wealth. So this evening's proclamation serves as a recognition of how far we've come, but we do have a long way to go. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for your support and your recognition of fair housing. It is a critical tool to ensure housing is accessible and attainable for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. City Clerk, is there anyone online?
No one online, Mayor.
Okay, so the public comment section is closed now, and we'll move on to item 7A, consent agenda. And may I have a motion to approve or amend the consent agenda as proposed?
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Are there any objection to approve the agenda? None seen. Approved. And we'll go to council consideration. And may I have, let's see, item 8 is 67th Avenue West Phase 2 Project Bid Award. And we have Mr. Jack Eklund, the Public Works Director, as a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. As you said, I'm Jack Eklund, Director of Public Works, and tonight I'm bringing to you for consideration the bid award for the 67th Avenue Phase 2 project. We have, all right. So this is the project that will construct sidewalks, curb and gutter, landscaping, street lighting, pavement overlay, and signal improvements along 67th Avenue between Bridgeport Way and Cirque Drive. The bid opening for the project was held on March 14th. At that time, we did receive 5 bids, and the lowest responsible bid was from Active Construction in the amount of $4,084,084. And just as a kind of reference on Active Construction, the city most recently worked with Active Construction just a couple years ago with they were our contractor on the Cirque Drive Phase 3 project, which is the project that improves Cirque Drive between Grandview and about Breckenridge Drive. So, but unfortunately, the bids we received were above the budgeted funding, and I can to kind of remind you on our funding for the project. So this is a project that we received about $765,000 in grant funding for right-of-way acquisition and design dollars back in 2018. And then in 2020, we received a $2.3 million grant for construction. Our total grant amount we received was $3.1 million, and we had a local match commitment budgeted of just under $800,000. Going over the bid results, and I would like to also direct you in your council packet, there is both a summary of the bids received as well as the bid tabulation for your reference. But so as I mentioned, so our engineer estimate for this was just over $3 million, and the low bid was just over $4 million, so it exceeded our estimate and our budget. There were 5 bids received, but one thing when we did our bid analysis, the bids were extremely tight. The difference between the low to the second low was about $30,000, and then possibly more telling is the difference between the low and the high was only about $200,000, which represents a bid range of just over 5%. And why we look at the bid range is that was to be an indication is there something possibly confusing in the bid documents? Is there something misleading, or is there grounds for maybe some clarifications. But when you see tight bids like that, that is an indication that at least the people bidding are all saying exactly the same thing. And so it appears that the bid documents are very clear and probably not a lot of room for just clarification and adjustments in a rebid situation. We did look, one of the things we looked at is where were the bids higher? And in this case, the higher bids came down to 3 bid items out of about 50 of them, but 3 bid items made up the entire difference, and that was the proportionate share of the mobilization, which typically is a multiplier of the overall cost. But then most significantly, it was a street lighting cost. Those went, we had estimated about $700,000, and they came in at about $1.4 million. Our $700,000 was similar to what we've seen on all our other projects, but we've talked to the electrician that was the low bidder on this one, and they mentioned it was just material costs have recently gone through the roof for electrical items. And then the other item is also related to electrical, and that's the traffic signal modification, which we were anticipating about $50,000 for upgrading the signal at 67th and Cirque with the flashing left turn arrows, and the bids came in at $150,000, and once again the electrician indicated that was primarily due to material cost increase. So where do we go from here? So as I mentioned, looking at our budget, what we had available from the grant for this was a little over $2.3 million. We had about $650,000 in local budgeted, so that had a budget of around $3 million. The bid was, the low bid was at $4,084,000. To plan for contingencies, we are recommending we at least plan for about a 5% contingency. So that'd be about another $200,000, which means we have a funding deficit of about $1.3 million. We looked at different alternatives of what we could do. The first alternative is to award the bid and identify additional funds needed to complete the project. The second alternative would be to reject bids and see if we can tweak the project. Now, we can't modify the scope substantially because there is a commitment under the grants to deliver what we said we're going to do in our application. But there was a possibility of, if we reduced elements of, like reduced the lighting level or reduced our landscaping to a bare minimum, there's a potential to save maybe around $300,000. However, that would be only on the, that would be assuming the bids came back about the same. And typically when you rebid and as things get later in the season, bids do tend to go up, so we may not realize that entire cost savings. And then there is a timing issue on this, that we are getting close to deadlines to actually move forward on the project. This is a project that, partly because of COVID, we had a number of project delays, and then also we had some staffing challenges, which did delay, and we have already done a 1-year extension on the project, so that we are in risk there. And then the third option would be to reject the bids and then try to go back to modify more substantially the scope with the state. But that would definitely result in us returning the $2.35 million construction grant we received back to the Puget Sound Regional Council, and then we would need to find another source of funding to still build the project. And then there is still a commitment due to federal funds being used in earlier phases that we would need to either complete the project by 2030 or pay back the $765,000 we've already spent in right-of-way and design funds. So with that, of those three options, we are recommending moving forward with the award and allocating, appropriating the additional funds for the dollars. One thing, we were originally looking at exploring doing an interfund loan between the general fund and REIT. REIT is a real estate excise tax. Recently, we did we've decided that we're going to advise against that course of action, partly because of the restrictions with the interfund loans. And although we did feel there's a conservative estimate that the REIT would come in, so when you do that, you have to borrow from one fund and then pay it back from another with interest. The risk there is you have about 3 years to pay it back, or 3 years generally to pay it back. And because REIT is not it's a fund that fluctuates a little bit, right? It is dependent on the real estate sales. And so although we think we were being conservative saying that there should be enough money, we really can't say definitively that there will be enough. And there is a risk then from an audit finding, if you aren't able to pay it back in the 3 years, that could put a black mark on the city finances, so to speak. And I know Matt and Leslie's over there that also, if you had more finance questions, they'd be able to pitch in as well. But what we're recommending on this is to fund it from the general fund. But then fortunately, we have, this year, we had some increased interest earnings above what had been budgeted. And those interest earnings would pay for a vast majority of the funding deficit needed. So that's our recommendation, is to fund this additional budget through the general fund. And with that, I would recommend, one thing I point out, the other thing I point out here is the motion in the council bill is a little different than sometimes. A lot of times we just say, let's award the contract. But because this one has the additional appropriation needed, we need to, it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg, because typically we don't come for the award until we have the concurrence by the state. But the state won't concur until we commit to the additional funding. And so in this case, the action is to authorize the city manager to award the contract subject to concurrence of award by WashDOT. And so then but then that, in the council bill itself, it does show the additional appropriation, and so then that would satisfy the state needs for the documentation. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and there's probably a number, but yeah, let me know what I can do.
Councilmember Fleming. Oh, why am I doing this?
I know. I have no idea where that came from.
I didn't either.
Finance Committee is just rolling on.
Very good.
It sounded like a coup d'etat at the dais here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good Lord, haven't had that one ever happen. So, Jack, I've had time to process since the last presentation on this particular project, and I want to state up front, I like what we're doing in the city, and we need to continue that. But a couple of questions. One, for the benefit of the newer members up here on the dais. We do have a history in the past when bids came in so significantly higher than what we projected. We did reject those bids, and we did notify all the parties that had contributed money to that so they wouldn't pull their money back, and allowed us the time to rebid that. And we could do that in a short order. We don't have to wait the full year to do that. So I'm kind of struggling in my tiny little head up here of why, especially after we got a briefing not too long ago from our assistant city manager that said we're running out of money and we need to look at how we spend that. But yet I'm hearing now almost a diametrically opposed proposition that says we may be running out here, but we can add it over here and spend it. So I'm trying to figure this puzzle out in my head. So can you help me with that?
Sure, and we have been fortunate. We haven't had to have this very often. So that's and so many of the council in front of us haven't experienced the situation, which I'm happy that that's the case. But you are correct. We have been able to in the past, if the situation was such that it looked like there were significant savings by just doing the rebid. And in the most significant case of that was with the Bridgeport Way project many years ago, that I'm sure is what you're thinking of is, the one that we did between Cirque and 40th. Mm-hmm. That was one where we had and there was That was actually the last project we had consultants do because that we found out when we went out to bid with that, the bids had a wide range. There was a lot of information that was probably not clear. And so that's one that we realized after these bids came in high, they were also the plans were, feedback we're getting, there was a lot of confusion on the plans. And so we then did reject the bids. We redid the plans with our own staff and put it back out to bid. That one, it was a different funding source than we have now. That one had state funding involved with it. And so there was some more flexibility. And also the timing of that was such that we hadn't already done a time extension. And so the situation was such that we could still do the scope of the project by just doing those clarification and tightening up the plans. In this case, there's a very little window for the stuff where you could just go right away back out and rebid. And the amount of savings, or the amount of savings in looking at that is very limited. So we'd still have to identify at least $1 million of additional funds to do that in looking at the prices. If we have to go back to rescope, that means because of the funding that we have in this case with the federal funds, it means we have to not only get the different, we have to get PSRC, we have to get local programs and WashDOT and FHWA all on board. We also have to get the State Transportation Improvement Plan, the STIP, modified to reflect what the new scope of the project would be. And so that would typically take much longer than where we are. And because of the unfortunate nature on this project where we already had to do the 1-year extension on it, that is now the maximum that PSRC has been allowing those type of extensions. And so it's a little bit of both. In the past, there was a little bit more leeway for extending funds, and now there is a hard 1-year deadline for that. And so that's where, unfortunately, we either have the option of identifying the money for it or giving the money back. So those are kind of our two options nowadays.
So the council's kind of backed in a corner, which I never like the council ever to be in that position, number one. So that one makes me a little remiss. The second part of that is if the council approves this 1.1 million for the project, how does that impact the rest of our general fund and all the concerns, I will say, that have been raised about cash into the future? Because, I mean, that we spent a whole retreat going over, I know, cash flow and the concerns about that, and now we're going to go take $1 million away from what little we have there. Because from what you tell me, we don't have an option.
Yes.
So how does that impact the rest of the city?
So the one, and I think because we were in the situation where we received the higher interest earnings than we were anticipating. So when we were last discussing our budget and our budget forecasts, the funds that were identified, or the interest earnings were projected much less. And so now we're getting over $1 million increase in the, and Leslie maybe will verify the exact number, but it's over $1 million increase in the interest earnings that we've received from our various funds. And so that in itself is a bit of a wash from the big picture. And then in addition, we do have, although we don't have the exact numbers yet, and they will come soon, but every year we have noticed, because we do budget conservatively, we always will have end-of-year savings. And so we anticipate the combination of both the interest earnings and the end-of-the-year savings will be in excess of the funds we need. And so it would be budget neutral from a standpoint of that budget discussion for the budget forecast.
Okay. So my last comment, and then I'll yield here. But and I appreciate, I'll reiterate, I appreciate what you have done and what you continue to do in terms of improvements in the city. But my message is more to the city manager and our mayor. we should never bring things before council in which we are backed into the corner and we have no options. I mean, that's not what the council exists for. But in this case, it sounds like that's where we are, so that's where we need to go. But, into the future, we really need to think out our projects a little bit with greater clarity and what those options are so that we continue to be those good stewards of our resources. And I know we are, but we want to continue to do a better job.
And certainly we do not like it. And you do have options. And they're just none of them are good.
Yeah, it's do it or don't do it.
Well, and so that's the unfortunate part here. And the material costs, one of the biggest impacts, and this is the first project we've had with, so traditionally in federal funds, the federal government had required you to do American-made steel for all your work, for all the project.
I remember
and that's been in effect for quite a few years. Now, recent legislation has changed it, so now you need to do American-made everything in your project, which this is the first project in which we've seen that impact. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly, because it's something we had this is the first, so we didn't have a good feel on what that means. So that's where this kind of caught us a little bit unprepared. And it's a little bit of unfunded legislation, which has benefits around, but it does trickle down to us and some additional costs. So this certainly is a kind of extraordinary and unusual circumstance. And so, at least for the timing on this one, so there's a little bit of a perfect storm on this as well. So it makes it, like I said, it's not we don't like coming to this type of options for you, so, and we certainly will work to.
All right, and I appreciate the effort, and I do love the idea that it's all made in America. So, that's a good point. So with that, I will yield. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor Figueroa, and Councilmember Fleming. Thank you for your comments too. Certainly, it's ends up being a difficult situation, not necessarily one of our making, but external forces. But we still get caught up in it, and it does kind of, as we think about spending what amounts to an additional $1 million of the project, that gets to be challenging. We're in a fortunate position, as we heard earlier today, where interest earnings for the year have far exceeded our expectations and basically would cover this gap without impacting other programs, and some contingency funds, if I understand things. So it doesn't necessarily have budget implications for the rest of our service profiles as we sit today. Nonetheless, that's a big gap, a big change. It's basically 700,000 now is 101.4 million rather. So it's doubled. That takes a little getting used to. We've had a chance to think about it for a week or so. And so, from my thoughts as I've looked at this, we had a grant ratio previously on this project as something like, I didn't really do the math on that part of it, but it was right around 75% external grant funds. This brings that number down to about 57% grant funds. That's still a pretty good ratio. Our citizens are getting $2 worth of product for every dollar they put in, a little bit better than that, frankly. Nonetheless, we could say no. If we do, we walk away from what amounts to about $3 million in grants. Mm-hmm. We could do that. We have other implications, though. Puget Sound Regional Council is tightening some of the things they do on future grants. And so if we turn back funds, we have the potential of impacting our future ability to get awards. But not just from Puget Sound Regional Council, but from the federal government and the state transportation people as well. It has some long-term implications. We could reduce the scope and put in different lighting we talked about. Well, why should this neighborhood, this stretch of road be any different than the rest of our community, unless we change our standard forever? And if this was a private developer that was putting this in, we wouldn't be talking about changing a standard. They do what we require, and that's the way it works. So we would be treating ourselves a bit different than we would with a private developer. So those things are kind of rattling around in my mind. I don't like the standard change. I don't really want to spend another $1 million. I don't want to impact our future grant revenue stream. We've done very well as a community, and our citizens have really benefited from that. We have some extraordinary, which is to say, money that wasn't anticipated that can cover this. And we've had it now for about an hour, meaning we had it in our budget report a little earlier this evening. Reluctantly, but the reality is I don't see a better choice in my mind than moving forward and finding the funds, most likely from the interest earnings. Because the rest of those outcomes in my mind have more implications and don't really, in my view, get us to where we need to be. And we want to move forward with the project, and we want to make that neighborhood, that stretch of road, safer. And this that'll have the same positive implications the rest of our street system has from the investments we've done there. So, Mayor, I just wanted to share some of my thoughts on that, and where I believe I'll be coming in when we get to the decision phase of this.
Good comments. I'm going to, as you all know, we're all council members, and I'm going to take that privilege. I did put my name down next, so I would like to speak. I don't want to wait to the end every time. So that's one of the changes I will be making as a mayor.
That's why you're the mayor. You get to wait till the end.
No, there's nothing there. So with that, and then after that is Councilmember Woods, and then McCleskey, and then whoever raises their hand. I think that under the circumstances with when the bids could actually go out, how they came in, is really out of our the staff's ability to control. If I saw things that it was controlled by staff, I may be more inclined to your model there, Councilmember Fleming, but I don't see that. And so I think that things like that will happen, maybe not in this category, but we've seen it in other areas, like, you know, people need money at the last minute. People meaning like even the Veterans Memorial. I mean, they were saying, we're not going to get this done unless the city helps in. We kicked in for the right reasons. I think I don't see that as much as that. And now we're, at least I'm looking at it from half glass full versus half glass empty, and that is we are really fortunate to have done what we did. Because of staff's help and our community, we have been able to provide our citizens, this community, with reserves or monies, pockets of monies, whether it be the interest rates, whether it be the opportunity fund that we have because of sales of land sales, or because of the levy that just passed, because if they hadn't passed, we probably wouldn't be talking about this as an option. I think we are so fortunate to be able to be provided with revenue for instances like this that are not in our control of anyone's, but it just happens. And we certainly, I'll get into what Councilmember Worthington said, there are some very serious consequences here if we don't. Forget about just the improvement that we really need for that neighborhood, but PSRC, I don't, if you remember last year, for those that were here last year, I reported a lot what was going on with the new changes because of cities not finishing and spending their dollars, and they're changing that criteria to make it harder. There's also not only PSRC, but all the players that Councilmember Worthington and staff mentioned of the players that are involved. So it's not just one player. It's a domino effect, and it's a big sum. This is not a $250,000 grant. This is like a huge sum, and I mention this because as you remember, for those that were around, when I reported, I was on a special committee from PCRC where several members were trying to put us, even though we rated high, to receive this grant, or at least to put us forward toward PSRC. There was a move to put us in the back seat and let others that didn't rate as high and put them on the front. That conversation hasn't gone away. I think that there's another consequence there that would happen. If we all of a sudden we should say, well, here's $2-something million, and some of those folks didn't get any of that, because what happens is they redistribute that for those that are ready among the Puget Sound area. And so there's a lot of consequences here for us not to take advantage. And I like the fact of what Steve said, and that is, the rate of return two for one. Even if we took money, the pocket, we have this money, so we're talking about reducing debt. We talk about, if we did that, we get $3 million right off the bat the first year. I mean, we're getting $3 million right off the bat for this. I think that there's a lot of pluses and a lot of consequences. I won't say negative, but the consequences are too severe to take us off what I believe, and I think most of you know, that we are really considered a highly rated city and utilizing grants. That's really the word on the street. And that's a key phase among players out there. And a matter of fact, it wasn't too long, Representative Levitt called me up. I think I made a report on that during the council report. She calls me up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and she says, there's a committee out there that's different monies, but she says, there's a committee up there, and they want to take money back for those that are not using it. I said, hold on, let me call Jack. And good thing, I mean, they were so happy that she was happy that she didn't have to report from her district that, her constituents like UP is not utilizing money. It's a big deal, not only at the local level at the state, but also at the federal level, PSRC, and other players that we took their opportunity away because we were able to make our case that are not going to be happy that they never got their opportunity, and now we're giving it back. So I believe that whether it be this extra revenue from the interest rates or other pockets of money that I do know that we haven't encumbered through our conversations, like the opportunity monies from the land sales and other monies that we still haven't decided. We still haven't voted on the debt reduction, though it seems like everybody seems to understand that's a really good investment. So I think that this investment here is great because we get 2 for 1, and we in the hands of the community. That's what we're here for. Is to our community has said we really need this and want this, and now we're able to do this. So I really am in favor of moving this forward with utilizing those dollars, and maybe not even specifically. I think that as the staff sees dollars that won't, for better words, trip council's decisions on where we wanted to make sure that there was money available for certain things that we wanted. As long as it doesn't trip that, then I say let them decide where it comes from that is available for this project. So I'll yield this now to Councilmember Wood, or Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. So a technical question, and actually this one might be more for Ms. Blaisdell. You had talked about REIT funding, and I actually like the idea of going to the REIT funding initially because it gets, the general fund gets paid back. And I know we've had a lot of concern about the depth of the general fund over time. And is it possible, legal, otherwise, if you don't feel comfortable funding this entirely through a loan from the REIT fund, could we do a partial loan, say 50%, 75% from REIT, and reduce our risk of an audit finding in 3 years, yet still get some of that paid back through REIT, which would be, I think, an appropriate use of that fund?
Yes, you could split it. You could do a portion from general fund, you could do a portion as a loan, and that would be totally allowable.
And then this might be beyond what you're prepared to answer. What level would you be comfortable in supporting out of REIT at this point in time?
I would have to go back through, like I said, carry forwards, and projects were all done, due on Friday, and I have not gotten through all of those numbers to have a confident answer for you as to what REIT is looking like over the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, and then following up with that again, then with this current motion, if we are to approve this project as tonight, because you're asking for an approval on this, are we committing to a funding source through this approval, or is that something that can be negotiated further on?
You're not committing to a funding source. However, if you plan on using REIT, you're going to, for an interfund loan, we're going to have to move very quickly, and that will require a council action. And just to be clear, in case you're trying to follow the bouncing ball where the dollars are going, the $1.3 million that we're talking about in terms of that difference, it starts in the general fund. There's two scenarios, or two, I'm oversimplifying, but there's two initial scenarios. The first scenario is the $1.3 million comes strictly out of the general fund, covers the entirety of what we're talking about in terms of that shortfall. The second scenario is that 1.3 or some portion thereof gets transferred to the REIT fund, and then the REIT pulls that portion, and so it's funded out of REIT. Then you're loaning, then the REIT fund will ultimately repay the general fund over your look-back period. Part of the challenge with the interfund loan where REIT's reimbursing the general fund is, one, from a policy matter, you haven't expended REIT funds until those are monies in the door. So you're taking a gamble on what you think the REIT fund is going to do. The second is you potentially impair your ability to use REIT as a match in future projects, which has historically been one of our larger funding sources. So when when that's coming out of REIT, you're committing that REIT money at some future date in the next 3 years or so is going right back into the general fund. That's the risk you're running, and that's part of where Leslie also needs to run the numbers in terms of the longer term forecast. Where's that level of comfort? But if you're looking at having a REIT do some flavor of reimbursement or an interfund loan, it's going to probably have to be on the next council meeting docket and move fairly quickly before we start executing contract documents.
So back to my question, we'd still approve this tonight and then
You could
next
approve it
council
tonight.
meeting? Okay. Okay,
Because it is subject to WashDOT concurrence, and then at the end of the day, yes.
got it.
And from a budget standpoint, because the capital projects, we don't do them all at the end of the year. Our budgets go each year. We have done in the past where we're allocating, so the action would commit that we're going to use some sort of city funds to be able to pay for it. So we're committing to pay for the contract, but there could be with a budget adjustment or just the upcoming budget itself when we're looking at $20-25, because this project we will be contributing funds in 24 and 25. We could actually, the increased costs, we could say those will be expenditures more in 25, which would give us a little more time as well from that standpoint.
Okay, and then one other question, not related to finance, but, well, I guess that's all is, but the All-American clause that we're now working with on federal funds, are we factoring that into all our future grant requests from the federal government?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure we're on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. That ends my question. Yeah.
Councilmember McCluskey?
All right, well, some of my questions and comments were already stated. I'm not going to reiterate those. When we were bidding this out, you didn't realize about the American-made component in it?
We knew that was a requirement. We did not anticipate the level of impact for it, though.
And also in regards to the REIT, I'm not really comfortable borrowing from the REIT. I don't think it's really a stable entity right now, especially with the trends that we're seeing, and also giving the money back doesn't set well with me. It's a lot of money, and we had a nice windfall in our general fund, and sometimes, as we say for a rainy day, this is a rainy day. And there seems like good trends in the future to reimburse that from the staff meeting, the explanations that I received there. So I'm comfortable with the expenditure because like what Councilmember Worthington indicated and our mayor also indicated, it's not favorable to give back the money on many, many different levels. I don't really want to go out for a rebid because I know it's going to be 5, 10, 20% higher. We got our insurance rate adjustments, just that, and that's in the double digits. So that has to factor in the bid for the bidding and the overall cost. So I have a feeling that we're in between a rock and a hard spot here. And I'm very thankful that we do have, a plan C to fall back on. So but I'll end my comments there.
Thank you. Any other, Councilmember Boykin?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you. I think this report and the explanation that you provided on the front end is what really gave a foundation for a plethora of questions that I think has been, I'll speak for me, absolutely informative and much appreciative. I have one clarifying question. In the scheme of things, there was a 1-year delay comment that you had made mention of. Can you first share with me what type of impact, if any, you think that had on the process?
Certainly whenever you do a delay, because as the longer it goes out, the higher costs unfortunately always go up. And so there was an impact there from cost increase, I'm sure. From our own, I think that's the main thing, is it basically there is the challenge that if unforeseen things happen that you have to, things get pushed out, there is that risk of increased costs as well. And then the other challenge with all the funds, and as Mayor Figueroa knows, the PSRC funds, especially, you have to do your application 3 years in advance of being able to, 3 or 4 years in advance of even be able to spend the money. And so then there's a bit of an unknown there as well. So all those are challenges and make it a little bit tricky. We try to accommodate, and unfortunately we haven't been bit too many times on it. So
no, you've got an excellent track record, and that's sort of my point. I think the thing that I was really getting at in terms of process is what we can control and what we can't.
Oh, yeah.
The expectation of when the budget was anticipated and then the 1-year delay, I presume there is, some standard variation of what a delay could possibly be when you think about these types of things. And I was just wondering if we were within that standard deviation of, is it 1 year, is it 6 months, what have you. But if we're spot on, great. And so I wanted to see how that came into play here, if at all, in terms of the impact. I think that, again, in terms of what we can control and what we can't control, we're in the best place possible when you think about the different elements that brings this about, whether you're talking about where the specific funds are coming from that gives us this opportunity, when you talk about the time frame and the leeway that was involved, and then when you talk about where we are right now in terms of what should we do. I think it's real easy to say we've got a number of excellent reasons for why we would not dare, I hope, not go forward with this. But the other component in terms of what we can control, and you spoke a little bit to that. You talked about the tightness of the bids and the variation of the percentages that really gave you clarity about it wasn't a scenario where those that submitted bids weren't unclear about what we were asking, as very differently when we had the anomaly where we felt very compelled to do a rebid because it was clear because of that variance we should not be expecting there to be really a host of folks that understood us. Therefore, there could be some significant cost savings. Yeah. And that's the time available, notwithstanding to actually revisit. So I'm actually excited about where we are in terms of how we can go forward. I'm appreciative about where, in fact, we would settle this, if you will, at least in terms of beginning to move forward in being laser focused at this point on the general fund. I'm absolutely on the same page with Councilmember McCluskey about not even wanting to consider good, bad, and different. Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, about REIT implications, because it's just too unstable for me as well. And I think that right now we've got a much better way forward if in fact we choose to move forward as a council in this regard. So I'm appreciative again of all of that. I think we did control what we could. This impact about specifically the criteria changes, I knew that was going to be impactful. Did not know how impactful it would be. Titanium is something else that comes to mind in terms of impacts in the future of, particularly when you talk about construction projects. But all of those being American-made, again, I'm excited about that. I think it does far more better for our city, for our state, for our country, if that's embraced. And so I'm willing for that to be a trade-off. And since it's not just us, again, I'm excited about where we might be. So again, I applaud you all for what you've been able to share with us. And I think that's really what the foundation is for all the questions. And I hope that people are getting their answers.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Grassi.
Well, thank you. I think in this case, I have the advantage of going last because I thank you. I appreciate it. But I want to thank all of my council colleagues and Mayor for your expertise and your thoughts. I agree with many of the sentiments, and I also agree that REIT isn't the best course of action. But I want to thank staff for working so hard and making bringing us with a difficult decision, as we say, a rock in a hard place, but doing it with wisdom and comprehensive thoughtfulness. So thank you very much for that. I would like to say I'm excited about this project and this level of safety that it's going to bring to that area. But one thing I would just like to say, I think that we do need to move forward, and I understand implications of not going forward with the grant money. But I think we have a great opportunity here to, as this project gets underway, to really showcase the benefits of our grant dollars going into this project. As Mayor said, 2 for 1. I think we can do a better job as a city when we're out there under construction, signage, your grant dollars plus city at work. I think that's an important message that our citizens would like to hear, that we're being fiscally responsible, but that we can also, we do a great job, and you work so hard for our grants, that I think that is a message that our community would love to hear. And as it has been said tonight, we do, we're at the top of our game with that. And so I think that's an important aspect of our city. It's a benefit to our citizens that they would enjoy seeing. So that's just one thought I'd like to add if possible. But thank you for all your hard work.
Yep. Okay, anyone else? So we'll go with, thank you, staff, with a motion. I'd like to have a motion to authorize the city manager to execute an amendment and ratify.
Mayor, point of order, public comment.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Is anybody here that would like to have public comment in regards to the item 67th Avenue West, Phase 2 project bid award? Okay, none seen. Is there anybody online?
No one online, Mayor.
Okay, so the public comment period is closed, and we'll go to council consideration. And I'd like to have a motion to authorize the city manager to execute an amendment and ratify a second change order to the professional services agreement with LDC Inc. to provide additional efforts. Oh, that's not it?
No, sir.
What was I reading?
That was a previous.
Oh, that was a
on the
previous
consent agenda.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I missed it. Everybody's earning their money today. So I'll restate myself with the proposed council action, and I need a motion and a second, and that is authorize the city manager to award the 67th Avenue West Phase 2 improvements project to Active Construction, Inc., subject to concurrence of an award by U.S. DOT in the amount of $4,084,084 and execute all necessary contract documents.
Mayor, I move to award the 67th Avenue West Phase 2 project to Active Construction Incorporated, subject to concurrence of award by Washington State DOT in the amount of $4,084,084 and execute all necessary documents.
Second.
Okay, so we open it up for discussion. And I know we had a lot of discussion, and so my bad as a chair, not to curtail it to clarification in questions, but it worked out just fine. Nothing is perfect as we see, but it worked out. Everybody got a word in, but we can still have any further discussions. And I see Mayor Pro Tem Wood raise. Did you raise your hand there?
I did.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. So non-technical questions now. Just first, my opinion is this isn't going to get cheaper. Delaying it, pushing it back, whether we do a rebid or we cancel it and try and do this again in future years with a new grant, is just going to get more expensive. And so I think taking action now is the way to go. You heard my comments earlier about REIT fund versus general fund. I would still be in favor of the council looking at our next meeting about how we fund this, but regardless of how we fund it, I am plan to support going forward with this project. Even if it comes out of general fund, I know we can do it. My concern is that I also know we're about to have a discussion where we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of other projects that we want to take out of general fund, and there's going to be discussion coming up at some point about transportation benefit district fees, and no one project is on an island. Everything affects everything else we do. And that is a concern of mine, and that's why I would like to revisit this next time and see if there's a portion we want to pull out of REIT, because that is something that does not come out of general fund. That's my reasoning behind it. Thank you.
So I don't see any hands, so I'd like to just make a quick comment on Mayor Pro Tem's, and that is the motion is for usage of general funds. I'm not interested in...
No, the motion is just to
correct.
award the project, but it doesn't say general funds.
Correct, but based on the presentation, and maybe we need to go around, but to get some direction from the rest of the council, but I'm not in favor of passing this and then having come back to discuss where the money's going to come from, whether it be REIT or anything else. I think that the presentation was, the action was to award this, and then if we have to amend this right now to be very direct, to utilize general funds, we can. I guess I got a clarification before I go further. So if we don't specify the funds,
I would encourage you not to specify the funds in the course of the current motion. Leave the current motion as is. However, I can tell you that staff is keenly listening to your comments in terms of where council is at on the use of REIT versus general fund. If it looks as though that there is significant interest in REIT, you'll see those numbers run and you'll see something REIT related in fairly short order has a potential source of funds.
okay. And so, but I'm not interested in doing another council meeting, study session, just on funding. I think they got that direction.
But the interfund loan would require affirmative council action. It just can't be done tonight.
Correct. That being said, I believe that there was at least, I want to be very clear here for the council for direction, because that's my goal here, is to always give you guys clear direction, and it's also clear for us what did we say. I heard at least three members. That was Councilmember McCluskey, Boykin, and Grassi, and I'll put myself in that. That's four that are not interested in any REIT utilization because of the gamble. I don't like to use gamble in this business of the citizens' opportunities, and so and the fact that, depending on what you come up with, we have to then come back and talk and approve. That's not what I believe what I heard. And I see another hand there, so there are at least 5 solid ones. So I think that the direction here would be, if this goes forward, is without REIT. So you're not coming back to ask for another approval of funds. So I'll end there and maybe come back, but right now, before I come to you, council member, is I saw a staff member wanted to clarify something.
Yeah, just a clarification. I think my understanding is without REIT as an interfund loan, I think we still would, we actually still have REIT budgeted in this. Some of our original 800,000 was already primarily REIT originally. So we still would utilize REIT.
Right.
And then Leslie will be able to look at REIT forecasts, and then as much as in context of what could be budgeted for, what portion of this can be used in 25. We will still look to see if REIT can be used with that, but it sounds like the majority of council is not interested in pursuing the REIT interfund loan type of thing.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Thank you for that clarification. Correct. Councilmember Fleming?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I just want to point out, Jack did an excellent job in clarifying, you know, where funding was coming from and how it was going to be utilized. I think it makes more sense to go on along the pathway of taking that as it is and keeping it clean. You know, take the 1 million out of the general fund. Don't play the shell game with REIT, because at the end of the day, that's exactly what it is. It also delays your project because it has to come back here for a vote on there. So I am completely, you satisfied my question, so I'm ready to move ahead with this and just keep it clean and do it as we got.
With that being said, my understanding, REIT is already being used as part of this whole thing, so
That's
it's already
correct.
being used. Any other comments?
Just one very quickly, if I could, Mayor. I just wanted to affirm Councilmember Worthington's pointing out that we've had a ratio of significant return for funds that we utilize when it comes to impact to residents and citizens here into University Place. And 2 for 1 is outstanding, and I want to recognize, because of the good work that's gone forward with council and staff, it's coming down to only a 2.1 return. So I just think that's an amazing element too, and ought to be applauded for the type of work and the scrutiny that when you do bring projects before council consideration, it really has been a very wonderful impact for citizens and residents of University Place.
Okay, so no more, and so, and given direction, what I've heard, and I'll get, as before, if nobody disagrees, that will be the confirmation of what the direction is, and that is, oh, no, excuse me, this is a vote, thank you. So now we're going to take a vote for this, and I'll have City Clerk do a roll call.
Mayor? Councilmember Boykin?
Yes.
Councilmember Worthington?
Aye.
Councilmember McCluskey?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Grassi?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Figueroa?
Aye.
Mayor, vote result 7-0 to
Okay.
the ayes.
There's your direction.
Don't come back.
Thank you, Jack.
This one.
Okay, so you did.
Not
Okay,
so fast.
so
Everybody's earned their money, I think, is
you're
what
not
this-
leaving?
No, I'm
Okay.
having Jack say a few words
So
to you. That's another topic.
I think Jack is tired.
So the next item is number 10, Rainier Communications Commission Interlocal Agreement by,
Point of order.
no, Councilor
No.
Courts. Where is that? I don't have it. Oh, excuse me, number 9. Well, I was just fast tracking. Being efficient. Okay, so you do want to speak, I guess. So this is a city manager and council comments and reports, and we'll start with the city manager.
All right, I'm going to flip this one to Jack because it's about the Cirque Park feasibility study. Quick update, and that'll be it for my report, and then I'll be back to you, Mayor. So,
All this commotion for that. Okay. Well, we'll then go to council comments, and we'll start.
just like 1 minute or so.
So on the Cirque Park feasibility, we've had our 2 flash vote surveys have been out. Our next step in the public process, we are inviting the public to come to our next Park Commission meeting, which is Thursday, April 11th at 6 o'clock. And they actually will be held in the council chambers here, and then we'll have our consultant there to show the various options that have kind of been formed through the various flash vote results. And so it's pretty neat the different options they're going to show, and then we'll report back the findings from that public meeting at our, right now we're planning the May council meeting. So
Okay. Time? Time of the Parks Commission meeting?
Park Commission meetings at 6 o'clock.
6 p.m.? Thank you.
8.
I'm looking, make sure there's no more comments.
No other report.
April 11th was the date. Yeah.
Okay, we're good? Okay. Well, we'll go to council comments and reports. And let's start to our right and have Councilman Worthington start.
Well, all right. Thank you, Mayor Vicaroa. Appreciate that. A couple of things to report. And so one of those is I was recently, as you recall, or perhaps recall, I was selected to serve, I think by this council, on the Opioid Abatement Council. They had their first meeting last week. I participated in that. There was some interesting conversation coming from that meeting. Just as a quick reminder, this essentially is the group that will help, in a sense, distribute the, and it's really more of the administrative oversight of the opioid settlement monies that are in place. Currently, those dollars are significant in total. Within the region, it's $1.5 billion, and that is anticipated from existing settlements spread over the next 17 years. There are other settlements in the works, and so that number will change. To date, we've received about $22,500, which doesn't seem much compared to $1.5 billion. We talked about some things into the future. That group, from a staff perspective, they had produced some estimates about what the revenue for University Place would be over the next 17 years, and in total, it's about $521,000. That number would also change if there's additional settlements, and there are a number of settlements in the works, and so that number will very likely increase. It's no real ability to tell us, for anyone to make a good guess at how much that would increase. Some of the jurisdictions have looked at ways to use the funds that they've collected so far. Roughly half the jurisdictions, or a little bit more than half the jurisdictions, are pooling their funds and working as a group or team, if you will, sharing some resources, much of that involving the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department, though there's other activities as well. Others jurisdictions, and of course UP is one of those to date, where we've decided to, at least so far, go a road alone and work out some ways that we can apply the funds that we have available. We as a council haven't talked about this yet, and so we don't really have a path forward, and I shared that with the Abatement Council, and they weren't surprised by that, nor are we alone. But some of the other jurisdictions have identified ways, and I wanted to share some of those thoughts just because they may be ideas that we have an interest in as well. For example, Auburn, where a portion of Auburn, as we all know, is in Pierce County, they are funding a clean and sober housing program. And so for the transitional housing, for those coming out of treatment, it's a way for them to get 3 to 4 months of essentially a grant to help in transitional housing. And there is I'm fairly certain, a strong need for that sort of thing. I found it to be interesting to hear about. The city of Puyallup is using this for some opioid treatment costs that are associated with their jail program. Fife has a jobs program that they've tied into this, helping folks get their feet on the ground through a summer jobs program for the most part. Lakewood is, I believe, currently holding on to the funds as we are. Gig Harbor is using it for a housing program and helping them with transitional housing, not so much on the treatment side, but in other pieces. Sumner is pooling with Pierce County and along with several other cities as well. Tacoma has a mixed approach where they're pooling some of their funds and having other programs that are independent to meet specific needs that they've identified. I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about more of that in the future. but I wanted to share some of those ideas at this point. One of the other things we did in the council was the interlocal agreements now are complete. This was really nearly the first official meeting, actually. I think there was a previous one, but I'm not sure it was actually the official one. We had one central question for this one. When, how often will we require ourselves to meet? And the outcome of that, minimally, it would have to be at least once a year, but the group ultimately asked that that be adjusted to no fewer than twice a year in terms of meetings. And so we can have more, but twice a year. And then you can remember how the gavel is handled and a few other things. So that's just a quick rundown on the opioid abatement council, also referred to as OAC. On another matter, the mayor and I were in Washington, D.C. recently. The mayor was out ill at the last meeting. I had a business conflict, and that doesn't happen often, but I had someone else's council meeting to go talk to, and there wasn't a way out of that. So I wasn't here for the last meeting to give a report. But in our visit to Washington, D.C., we did meet with Representative Kilmer, though not in our direct district, certainly a neighbor and someone that shares many of our, as a community, many of our points of interest. And we had a chance to discuss those items with him. All of this, much of this focused around the Day Island Bridge, but not all of the conversation. We also met with Representative Strickland, and she spent a good deal of time with us as we reviewed the project. You might remember that Congresswoman Strickland has been on Day Island, has been on the bridge, has seen that, and has been out here in UP on several occasions, of course. And so we're moving that forward. We additionally met with representatives or staff for Senator Murray, and in her role as Senate Pro Tem, that was very helpful. And we also met with staff member for Senator Cantwell separately. Senator Cantwell happens to be the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee as well as the chair of Senate Commerce. And so when the mayor asked, would you mind calling the Secretary of Transportation and asking them if they can help us? The staff member said, certainly, we can do that. I think that's the case. We were both sort of going, really? But that was, hopefully that will be the case. But it was nice to hear an affirmative response. Previous to that, we were getting a less than affirmative response, but certainly good intentions. Hopefully that'll indeed be the case. The day that we were there, I'm sure just because we were there, the House passed its budget, and deep in that budget is, you heard earlier, is funding for improvements for the Chambers Bay roundabout. And so the next day, the Senate passed that budget. Again, must have been because we were there. So we got it through the Senate, and then 2 days later, the president signed it. And so it was the next day when we met with the president at the National League of Cities Conference. On Sunday, the president was, not surprisingly, keynote when he came in, but it was fascinating to be able to, for me, the first time to see President of the United States give a in-person speech. And as a student of rhetoric, I thought it was pretty good. So it was a good moment. We were both engaged with the National League of Cities, along with the Association of Western Cities had a meeting as well that we participated in, and then the Western Coalition of Cities had an opportunity to talk about all the Western cities on a state basis, some of the things they have in front of them. There's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences, but many of the issues in their heart are similar, and that's always, I find, intriguing and valuable to see that we face some of the same challenges, though the names are certainly different, and the topography is different, and the weather is different. The challenges remain the same. Mayor Figueroa may have some other things to add, but yeah, that's what the things I wanted to report on. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. I'll move to myself here, and I think that just to add to Councilmember Worthington's report, we did ask specifically Kilmer to make that call. And I did ask, I think, 3 times. And so I think he said yes 3 times. So, and then the same thing with Strickland. And she said yes. I asked her twice. She said yes twice. And then the staff person with Cantwell, which seems to be a veteran and knew the drill, was more than excited to make that call. He knew the actual staff person in charge of all that. So that was all very positive. Murray's staff seemed not to be maybe clear about the process, so he said no, that didn't seem like it was appropriate to make that call. We didn't push it, of course, but to get 3 out of the 4 we visited saying yes. That being said, I did send a letter thanking them for their meetings, and in that letter, it was reminded that they, if they're, about the call, that there was a need for them to make that call. And we appreciate for them to make that call. So again, maybe 3 or 4 times. Hopefully they will make it. Make that call. We did visit federal agencies, FEMA and who else?
Department of Transportation.
Department of Transportation. Very good meetings, some very good key people that were at the table. They were very familiar. Well, some were familiar, some were not. But that being said, it was worth the time for us to be there telling this story, and especially, and we're talking about Day Island Bridge and the grants. And the urgency and the importance of that, of not just the bridge and the community that it serves, but the location of that bridge over the railroad. And we're able to tell the story about who all the interested key players, a lot bigger than UP, as to the need to replace that bridge and all the letters of support. I think that, and I hope you agree, but they were very happy to have gotten this briefing and to highlight the letters that were open in their package. They were trying to, okay, where's that letter, like from the Department of Defense, from the military and things like that. So it was very positive. I did learn, I should say we learned that the process for the, especially from DOT, they had this grant. It's already gone to, what, the panel of 3? And how they select,
It's headed that way, excuse me.
Right?
Yeah, I think it's headed to them, it's not there yet.
Okay, it's headed, but everything's been done. It was heading to a panel that they select from a pool of panelists that they approve, certify, whatever they do. And then they pick 3 out of nowhere. Maybe they don't even live in the Northwest. They may be from who knows where and have no idea about anything about this project. And so they said, the importance of being very clear about checking off those boxes and being really clear. So I think that, one of the things we all should do as a council, I hope, that when we do put important grants forward that really makes a difference, and that we may, get a copy. I would hope that we should be getting a copy of that grant, and we all get an opportunity to go through it and see if we see anything to help staff, making sure that we emphasize things that are really important. I think we need to be part of that process to some degree, because that was really a key. Because once that's in, it seemed I was a little bit more straightforward than Steve. But I did ask, and I did ask, well, if it's at that point where it's done, what can be accomplished now with our conversation, to that kind of thing. And of course, they kind of said, well, we can't comment on, I forget what they said, but I think I put them in a strange position of what could they do. And of course, Master Councilmember Worthington reminded me later
there's still conversations among staff when it's all said and done. They come back, things that can happen for whatever reason, and that's why we have the staffers and our representatives to make the call, because there's still some room for whatever that is that we don't understand what room there is, but obviously there is, because not that I went through the whole scenario, I think that those staffers, or Derek, or Kilmer, and Strickland would have said, listen, we can't do that because it's over with. It's going to the panel. It's too late. So I think just their actions said something to us that there's room there for some advantages. So just wanted to kind of let you know what happened there in the conversations. They were delicate, but I think that our consultant, Delta, who actually was with us, we agreed to pay them, the extra dollars to finish the job, and we've been paying them. I think they do an excellent job in preparing us for this, whoever goes, but also for all the follow-up and the initial meetings and everything else. I don't think we could do that from here. So I think it's worth every dollar. So other than that, that's kind of, I just want to let you know about that kind of work. I don't know, and Steve, you can help me here, how long before they're done and they would know?
Yeah, I think there's one that comes into review about July and another one in September.
It's just to kind of give you an idea, July, September, we should be saying something, and if it's all good, then we can relax, but if it isn't, then we got to go to the next level of how we can lobby for and submit more for those same grants again. Go ahead. Go
Just while we're in this, and I know we're a little out of our usual method, but just because of the nature of this report, a couple of quick things. One, I think if you have the opportunity, this is very much worth doing. Two, last year I did this solo. I think it's much more effective with a team. And just because you have one talking, one listening, and somebody can backfill one another. And three, if we have a budget, if there's someone who's new to the process that can come online and start seeing how it's done, that's going to help in the future too. But that's a budget issue as much as anything else. But just some quick observations there. There was one gentleman in the Department of Transportation I met last year that he remembered when we said hello. And so there's some value, I guess, to occasionally remember. They must see more people than I do, and I think I see a bunch. But anyhow, yeah.
Good. Well, hopefully that was helpful. They understand, our time and expense there, which I think is important. The last thing, and this is a little bit for Steve, and that is Duck Days is coming. And I know we are some very busy council members. And so please do not forget the first Saturday of June. We reserve that time. It'd be great to see all of us on there. And that being said, see if we can have Marion send out an email to council, because it's not a guarantee that we will get the cars or not. Okay, the Corvettes or not. But I'd like to know if we are, and if not, what's Plan B? And if there's no Plan B from the city, then we have to come up with our own Plan B.
We get to walk the parade.
Well, no, I'll get a moped or something.
It'd be a Fred Flintstone car.
That's right. We'll just go to Councilmember Fleming's and just take them all out.
There you go.
So that being said, thank you, and I appreciate it. Sorry for the long one, but when we're talking about Day Island and those grants, I think it's good for our council to know the details. So with that, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple of comments. First, by the way, I was just at the LeMay Car Museum. They actually have a Fred Flintstone car in there. We can try and see if we can. Moving on. Last Thursday, I attended the PCRC online. The very beginning of the meeting, they covered award of TCC projects. There was no debate because they had authorization to fund 6 projects, and they had exactly 6 applications. So it was a very short discussion. There was an interesting but probably academic discussion of how to classify what a small city is. Because right now the law, I believe, or the guidelines they use is 10,000 people or less. There's discussion about, hey, maybe we should move that to a percentage of 1.2% of something or other. For us, it's academic because we're solidly in the middle, medium-sized city category, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Then there's some committee reports, followed by the Zoo Truck Authority report, which was interesting, but we heard all of it from Councilmember McCluskey at our last meeting, so I don't feel the need to go through that one again. And that's it for the PCRC. And then the next day, I represented UP at the Tacoma Community College Foundation Luncheon. It's a big fundraiser / event that they do for scholarships. Very interesting panel discussion. And I was sitting at the same table with a couple of our Pierce County council members, and a Tacoma City council member was there as well. And just because I find it interesting, it was a small Army story. Paul Herrera, one of the county councilmen, we discovered that we served in the same Army Reserve unit at about the same time, 20 years ago. So just a point of interest. Other than that, it was, I thought, a great luncheon and really a good benefit. They ended up raising in the neighborhood of, I want to say $125,000 towards scholarships for students for TCC. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey.
All right, thank you. I don't have too much to report, but I do want to welcome Corey Shears to the new COO position in University Place. I'm excited that he's a seasoned past officer and will bring all that experience with him when he does his new duties as assigned. So I'm looking forward to hearing some good reports and good feedback from him in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Boykin.
Mayor, just a quick comment along the lines, again, of really what was presented tonight. No report for the most part in terms of community engagement that may be worthwhile sharing for council. But I did want to underscore the importance of the proclamation, the expectation of it really standing up civil rights, and then the theme of inclusion. It also runs through the update, if you will, about the groundbreaking opportunity for the inclusion park. So I'm just really delighted about that because it just continues to remind us, as what was shared, it's a very welcoming committee, and it's also a very welcoming city intentionally as a result, and I'm really appreciative about all of that.
Okay, so moving on to, now I have it right.
You got.
You forgot the rest of your council, Mr. Mayor.
You forgot.
I still didn't have it
We're
right.
beginning to feel a little, we're not beginning to feel the love at this end.
Sorry, I'm going to have to put my back to you guys.
No worries.
My full
No worries.
attention here. Councilmember Fleming.
Well, I'm
I want
going
to
to
give her the
yield
last
to
word.
Gracie, and then I'll be last. How's that?
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, I called on you.
I passed.
Okay. Councilmember Grassi.
Thank you. Well, I enjoyed, just quickly, my time with the Pierce County Economic Development Board annual meeting. Councilmember Boykin was there as well, and that was a wonderful time to engage with our community and hear about the economic forecast for our community. So I appreciated that. I also want to echo Councilmember McCluskey's welcome to Officer, our new Corey. He was here. He left. He's out already on duty, but we're excited to welcome him. And I am excited for Duck Days, so thank you for bringing that up. I think our communications department put out an excellent reel today talking about the upcoming summer events in University Place. And just on Saturday in my nonprofit work, we welcomed at the corner of 67th and Cirque 2,800 kids from our community that came out for our UP Community Egg Hunt on Saturday. So 2,800 kids from ages 1 month to 12 hunting for eggs at the corner of 67th and Cirque was quite a sight to see. But it just reminded me that our community is ready to come out and enjoy the sunshine and community, and it was wonderful to engage with all of those families and see all of those happy kiddos from our city. So it was a great time, but I'm excited for our community event. So thank you to the city staff for putting that teaser out. We're going to look forward to Duck Days and concerts in the park and more. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'll go last.
Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to circle back really briefly to Jack Eklund's comments earlier this evening, because when you drive around University Place and you see the evolution of the beauty that's coming out of that, and it really goes back to our staff and the hard work they do and the grants they get and the funding they get. and the feedback that all of us as council members get to enjoy, as people pass through our community and visit it. They see the transformation. I mean, I don't know how many of us remember back to the old roads when we had no sidewalks and we had no street lights. And you look at the beautiful city that has grown out of that, it warms my heart. With that said, I was at the PCRC meeting. It's already been covered. I won't belabor it. And with that, I have nothing else to say, Mr. Mayor. So we can move on.
Okay, let's move on. We'll move on to item number 10. Well, excuse me. I'm going to close the general meeting at this time and move on to our study session. And we have an item, Rainier Communications Commission interlocal agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Matt Kaser, your city attorney. I was looking for Jack to see if he wanted to handle this one too, but he ducked out. I think, as many of you know, the city's been a member of the Rainier Communications Commission since shortly after incorporation. We're working on an interlocal agreement between the city as well as the county and the cities of DuPont, Fife, Ording, Puyallup, Ruston, and Sumner. Under the current iteration of the interlocal, which dates back to 2003. So you're dealing with a 21-year, give or take, interlocal agreement. As you can probably imagine, a number of things have changed. But also, the more things change, sometimes the more things stay the same. Because of the city's long relationship with the Rainier Communications Commission, we've done a number of things that, just even in the recent history, that has fulfilled a lot of purposes behind the RCC vision. As council may recall, just in last year and a half or so, we executed a long overdue franchise agreement with Comcast Communications, which was the result of a lot of RCC-related effort, but also RCC has also evolved over time. In the beginning, as it were, as a forum for a lot of communities and jurisdictions to come together. That role has subsequently changed a lot. The RCC provides to the city, to its member cities, a number of back-end type services that you don't normally think about. Those include things such as the assistance of video programming and additional production services. We have a national award-winning team here in the city. Not every city can boast that, but we're able to provide that support, that leverage, and the RCC is able to complement those services and provide wraparound services. To provide funding and support for the telecommunication needs, both within the city as well as the other RCC jurisdictions, to provide the model franchise agreements along the lines of what I've talked about. But over time, as things get more complex, there is time to also take a look at what I'm going to call under the hood type changes. And what you're looking at with the current model of the interlocal and where these amendments are, these are a lot of the under the hood type changes. With the RCC taking on these roles and it's just kind of the growth of things, as it were. There is the need for additional clarity. Who's responsible for what personnel, and all the questions that go along with that. Who handles payroll? Who handles the liability associated with those personnel? Who handles the administrative functions? Who can do budgets? This has been a long-term conversation within the RCC that has gone on for 18, 24 plus months. 3 years, I'm being told 3 years. From our current RCC chair, I didn't want to sell that one short, but it's been a while. So what you're looking at is, like I said, is a lot of these under the hood changes. These were extensively negotiated changes. And I'm proud to say, and I think a number of the other RCC jurisdictions are probably proud to say, that we're in a form where we can take these changes to our respective legislative bodies. Just to give you an update, of the member jurisdictions that I had named at the outset of my presentation, I had been advised that last week Pierce County has signed off on the agreement. The cities of DuPont, Fife, and Ording, and I saw that Puyallup has it on its agenda for tomorrow night. And then, of course, there's been other legal changes over the years in terms of public records, indemnity, and the like, that just require a lot of the under-the-hood changes that clean it out, and hopefully that provides a model template for the next period of time. That's a lot in a fairly short period of time. I'm certainly happy to answer questions. However, I also, in a selfish little moment here, also have the chair of the RCC here, who can provide some additional insight and was there present as well. So with that, I'm happy to yield it back to council.
Thank you.
You did great.
Any questions? And before we have questions, since we have the chair of the RCC, I'd like to give him first position to make any additional comments along with Matt and anything else that you want to say.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that, and appreciate all of Matt's good help. It has been a bit of a journey. I'd also want to recognize that on my left is a former RCC chair, and on my right is a former RCC chair, too. So we have just a whole panel here for you. This agreement hadn't been touched much or at all since 2003, and actually much of it predates, it goes back before that. And I don't want to go over every amendment that is proposed, but I will tell you that this is the third draft, which is why it was just about 3 years in the making. We finally were able to, I think, get to some common understandings and a common language. Along with being chair, I served on the committee that was involved in the representing the RCC's interest. There was County Council Member Hitchens on that, as well as the City of Ording's City Administrator, and a bevy of attorneys. That's how attorneys travel, isn't it, bevies?
It's like, yes.
Okay.
It works.
Okay, all right. I thought it was a murder. Yeah. So there were a number of meetings on a very regular basis, and it's taken some work. But what you have in front of you, I think, represents a good understanding that clarifies roles and duties, that still allows the RCC enough autonomy to do its business, and that I believe allows the City of University Place to have a fair share voice in the process as well. If, when this comes to us, if this passes, as it has passed now for a number of jurisdictions, RCC's next step is working on a bylaw document, and so I may let someone else take on that one. We'll see. But there's been enough time on this. But any case, but thank you for allowing me to represent the city on the RCC. I think it's been about 5 years now, and this is my third year as chair, and somebody else will get the gavel next year, I'm sure. So.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, if there's any questions that you have for Matt or I, we'd be happy to, for Matt or me rather, I'd be happy to try and deal with those.
Okay, and I'll start with Councilmember Wood, which I saw firsthand, and then Councilmember McCluskey.
Whoever you are.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is...
Maybe Belisi.
Okay.
This is a technical question. It talks in here in the finances section that they want to change it as, instead of a per subscriber, just to 0.5% of our, what was that, of the city's cable franchise fees. Does that lock us into a dollar value for a period of time going ahead? I'm just curious about how that gets evaluated, because people are cutting the cord to cable over.
Yeah, no, we run the numbers. The numbers are being run consistently, and there's some sharing amongst the data along those lines. This was one of the changes that it mirrors one of the changes, and there's a couple different buckets of funds, but since you're talking the percentage of funds, one of the significant changes that the jurisdictions made when we negotiated the Comcast franchise was there's a bucket of money. It's historically been referred to as the PEG fee, Public Education Government Channel. That's what UPTV and PCTV run off of. We've taken the P out of it, and so it's just called EGG, because YouTube. On that piece, one of the things that had been historical about many of these agreements would be a per head charge. And the recognition was very much as you recognized, that people are cutting the cord, there's different financing models, so to move from a per head charge on the customer to a percentage model. This agreement generally tracks at least some of those other downstream buckets that you were talking about, what we're already seeing in those franchises. And those franchises were negotiated recognizing that this would probably be the cost model when we finally had an interlocal put together. So they complement each other and they tie together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember McCluskey.
All right, thank you. Well, Mayor Pro Tem was going down the bunny trail I was going to go down, but my question is also, what's the sustainability over time with the funding model that is proposed with half a percentage of the franchise fees?
The sustainability, I wish I had the crystal ball, and I don't have the crystal ball. That 0.5% model has generally been the model. The larger challenge is sort of a national trend, if you will, in terms of the cord cutting, the over-the-top type things. What I would say to that is one of the areas where the RCC does provide leverage for us and in terms of reinforcing that stream, irrespective of the financing model, is it still gives us a seat at the table and a foot, you know, in the game, as it were, to provide that leverage for the negotiations and having part of that conversation on both the state and the national levels. So that way, as we're seeing those trends, you know, with the changing customer base and whatnot, that those revenue streams for the local jurisdictions, whether it's us or other folks, are still preserved.
Okay, well, I'm not quite sure I'm grasping that because, but.
There might be some added verbiage here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, and indeed, we have the shift in cable users, but the other thing that is going on that's a trend is how the FCC is changing the rules and the authority of commissioners like the RCC, or basically of local jurisdictions. And so consistently over the last 5 or 6 years, the decisions have been further eroding our authority in the process. And one of the arguments now is get your franchises now before it gets further eroded. We handled that. But so you talk about trends, the FCC has been more in favor of the industry in certain decisions than they have in local jurisdictions, and that's one of our bigger trends too. All of that does have some long-term implications for us, and, the ability to control their right-of-ways and charge for their use.
Right. And so I can see where the bylaws would be essential component to this moving forward too. I like the clarification, and it seems the long time overdue to create a professional model, a business model, going forward to lean in with the changing times. Because it's a valuable service. It's one that Councilmember Grassi's father and I fought on the council to have UPTV, videotape our council meetings, each and every one of them, to be out there, and I would like that to continue because I still, to this day, have heard feedback that people watch it at their leisure. They stay in tune. Sometimes I get comments back. And so I would like to preserve especially that aspect of it for transparency going forward, and also the wonderful job that Linda sees and her crew does. It's the valuable service, so I'm glad that they had the insight to get this going so we could preserve whatever it is that we need to preserve, that we have been eroding. I'm still unclear on that piece of it, but I understand the reality that our authority was eroding to what degree or aspect of that. I'd rather, as a local entity, can have as much authority as we possibly can to control our communication contact and how we want to market what we do here to our citizens. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Oh, Councilmember Fleming.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor, just some quick questions.
Yeah.
You know, as I read through this, a couple of things I didn't see, so I'm hoping it's in there somewhere. One is this interlocal agreement's going to be in existence for some time, and my question is, the previous ones didn't stay up with the changing times.
No.
You know, and I don't see that in this one. And as, you know, in previous conversations, I've talked about streaming and over-the-top streaming, which will probably have a greater impact on RCC over time. How do they mitigate for the evolution of technology, which I don't see here? So that's my first question.
Okay.
My second question is that in the past, in the interlocals, we talked about who covered the cost of equipment within the jurisdictions. And I think at one time, RCC paid for part of our cameras, and we paid for part of our cameras and other stuff. I don't see that in this agreement. So if you could address those two.
Take care of parts of those.
Yeah.
I think the first part to your question, and it piggybacks off, I think of some of what Councilman Rokoski had said. If I give you sort of a phrase to look at, is from an interlocal perspective, look at it as a strength in numbers position. Rather than, all right, what services are we actually going to deliver, whether it's the streaming example that you talked about or some other example. But how do we continue to pool those resources with our peer jurisdictions that have also decided to, stay on board with the RCC, so we can take advantage of those technological developments and the like. This agreement doesn't, and you won't see in this agreement that it calls out for streaming and such. But what the RCC historically has been sort of a unifying, hey, let's get together. We're thinking streaming. You're thinking streaming. Is there some way we can leverage that throughout the course of our various agreements with these telecommunication franchises? So that way we can provide a mechanism to handle, to use your example, streaming or whatever the next whiz-bang technology is going to be. And we saw that already just even with the most recent Comcast franchise where we anticipated, that we'd set aside some channels for HD capacity, which historically had not been a thing for either this body or other bodies that had been broadcasting their stuff throughout Pierce County. The second part on the financing model, the short part I would say, especially with equipment, is it's hard and it's not easy for a quick soundbite type answer for you. Going back to the franchises, most of the franchises, ours is the one exception, and there's a reason for it that I'm going to wind up to here in a second. Provide for an egg rate, I think it's 3.75% off the top, and that goes for the capital costs, whether it's the cameras in each council chambers, the back end boxes that cables run through, and the like. Ours is slightly higher than that 3.5% because of the member jurisdictions. We're the only one with our own channel that we get to say is our own. If we did not have UPTV in that spot, channel 3, whatever it is on the various channel platforms, we'd be broadcasting TV Tacoma. You could have TV Tacoma or you can have UPTV, and this episode's a lot better than whatever they're broadcasting over there right now. So historically, there has been some pooling, and there is a capital replacement strategy that they're talking about as they circulate the money through. Because each chamber's setup, as they're doing, upgrading the equipment, it's not cheap. I'm looking for a slight assist here, but the number that's ringing to mind here, last I heard, was somewhere in the neighborhood, don't hold me to this, but I want to say 80,000 is the number per chambers that's coming to mind. I think that's right, but if I'm wrong, I can circle back with you on that. But at the end of the day, it comes back to those comments that when I answered your first question is there's a strength in numbers perspective in here. And I think that's always been, I'd like to think that's always been the case with the RCC.
That was the impetus to actually start it, so you're spot on. So thank you.
If I can tag on that just a little bit too, one thing that this agreement does, the other one didn't do as much, is this anticipates the RCC's mission has shifted a bit from franchise management to video production, and this. It was a secondary business, and used to be the Rainier Media Center. And now that has more been integrated into the document. It was really one of the strong pieces now. And that was the motivation for a number of the jurisdictions, was making sure that they had access to production and that there was a perceived framework to how that gets managed that provided equity to the partners. So that was one of the things that we're looking towards.
It's a good
And also potentially even expanding the scope of the RCC membership. There had been a significant interest in non-RCC members wanting to take advantage of some of those services. So how do you contract? What do the logistics of that contract look like? So if somebody who's not an RCC member and they want to sign a contract, you have to run it through each of the legislative bodies. Do you run it through the county? Yeah.
Yeah, there was some real, that was an excellent change, and there are non-RCC governmental entities such as the Port of Tacoma, such as Tacoma Pierce County Health, that routinely use that, but it wasn't easy to get there if you take every signature having to go through a contract. So that process was changed.
That's good.
You good?
Yeah, I'm very good.
Anyone else? None seeing? I'd like to ask, so it wasn't clear, what is it the direction you need from the council?
I would like a collective head nod to put this on the next agenda for approval, preferably on a consent agenda, unless council would like to have it preemptively pulled for further discussion.
Okay. So you heard the direction that they're looking for. Any objection? Please raise your hand. No objection?
I just have one caveat.
Pardon me?
I'm fine with the moving it on to consent in our next staff meeting. If you could clarify what authority has been eroded and a couple other questions that I have, but nothing with the scope of what we're doing. I'm fine with it. Just need some clarification on the back end. Okay, thank you.
So prepared for council approval, and we'll put it in the agenda. Okay. With that said, we are now at the end and adjourn the study session.